Hello, everybody. This is the lesson on mid-segment theorem, and the theorem states that the segment connecting the midpoints of two sides of a triangle is parallel to the third side and is half as long as that side. So we know that every triangle has three sides, and the mid-segment of a triangle is the segment that connects the midpoint of those two sides of a triangle. So if we're looking at number one here, and we're talking about this side here, E and F, and then we are talking that the mid segment here would be, the midpoint here would be M. If we are looking at E and G, the midpoint would be P, and if we're looking at G and F, the midpoint would be N. So it's asking us if we are looking at M and N, so M and N right here, we want to know what is parallel to that. So we know that this line here is parallel right here to E and G, line segment E and G. Okay, so we know that this segment here is half as long as this one right here. Okay, so if we go over to this example over here, we get that same exact result. We're going to look at R and S. So R and S. So we're going to be talking about this line right here. That's going to be our longer side, R and S. So we're looking for the one that is half that, but it has to be parallel to that. So the line that is half that is P and N. P and N, because it has to be parallel. Now, if you notice that you've got other sides of that triangle, so you can go and look and see that you've got the long side T and R, and the half of that one, because we said that there's three sides. So we've got N and M, that is the mid segment there, or the mid, they're parallel to each other. And the third one we would have is T and S and P and M, but you're only talking about the one, and you're only being asked to find the one that is parallel to R and S, which we already said was P and N. So you can be asked for one of those. All right, now we're going to talk about, once we know what lines we're actually looking for, and we're going to solve for the other part of it. So we know that G and H are congruent because we have our line GH, and GR is congruent to RH because we have our little hash mark here, and R is our midpoint. We have GF over here, and GS is congruent to SF because we have our hash marks here. So S is our midpoint there. So we know that RS is half of HF. So we can either write it saying that RS is equal to 1/2 HF. Now, that's actually okay, but it's actually easier to use where we take the smaller and do twice of RS is equal to HF, the bigger, because that way we don't have to always rely on dividing. Okay, so we know this time our smaller HS is 5. So we're going to say 2 times 5 is equal to, we can give this a variable since we don't know, we can just call it x, is equal to x. So 2 times 5 is 10. So this one is actually easier because of the fact we're not having to divide by 1/2. So 2 times 5 is 10. So we know that our base right here is equal to 10. And that makes sense because if we were to double 5, it would be 10. So we know that HF is equal to 10. Okay, so let's try another one. Okay, we have to make sure that our sides once again are congruent to themselves. We have this line right here, we have VW, and our midpoint is J. So VJ is congruent to JW. We know that because of our given information. We have WX, and we know that this is the midpoint because of our hashtags here, hash marks. And so we are given 8 here. So again, we're trying to find the bottom. So we can say that twice 8 is equal to x. And again, you're just multiplying. So that would be 16 is equal to x. So that would be our final answer there. All right, for our last type of problem we're going to do where we have to set up our equations so that we have to solve for x, and then we might even be asked to fill them in. But right now we're just solving for x, but you might actually have to fill in and solve for either q, r, or ce. Okay, so we know again that this smaller mid-segment right here is twice or half of this one. This one's twice as long. Okay, so we're going to say that 2 of these is equal to 1 of those. But again, we have to make sure that is Q the midpoint? Yes, it is. Is R the midpoint? Yes, it is. So we are given that information. So we know that 2 of x plus 14 is equal to x plus 21. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and distribute. Okay, so I'm going to get 2x plus, and then you just have to make sure that you do 14, which is 28. Okay, and then is equal to x plus 21. So now from here, you're just going to solve for x. Okay, so we're going to subtract x, and then you're going to have x plus 28 is equal to 21. And then you're going to do subtract the 28 from both sides. And look, at this point, you can have a negative x. It is not saying that you are saying a width is negative. You are just saying that the x itself is negative. So when you go to plug this in, what you're saying is negative 7 plus 14 is equal to 7, which that makes this length 7. And then negative 7 plus 21 is 14. So that does work out because twice 7 is 14. So that one does work. All right, the last one we're going to try here is number 12. And we're going to again check and make sure that this is our mid-segment, and it is. And over here is y our mid-segment. Yes, it is. So we're going to set this up, and we know that this smaller piece right here is twice as long as, so 2x minus 4 is equal to 3x minus 1. So we're going to go ahead and distribute. So we're going to get 4x minus 8 is equal to 3x minus 1. All right, so now again, we want to make sure our x's stay positive. So I go ahead and subtract 3x from both sides. And I'm going to get x minus 8 is equal to negative 1. And I'm going to go ahead and add 8 to both sides. So if I add 8 to both sides, I'm going to get x is equal to 7. Now keep in mind, the directions did just say to solve for x, but I do want to go and plug in just to make sure that my answers are correct. So we know that answer is 7. So I'm going to say for my segment here, we're going to do 2 times 7 minus 4. So we've got 14 minus 4, so that is 10. So we're really hoping that we're going to get 20 here. So we're going to do 3 times 7 minus 1. So 21 minus 1 equals 20. And so 20 is double 10. So that does work. So our answers do work. So I hope you enjoyed the mid-segment theorem and the answers on how to do that. Thank you.